starting off, tell us a little bit about your background, professional achievements, education, a little bit of a resume, and just, for anyone who may not be familiar with it.
Good evening. Thank you so much for coming out, and thank you for having this forum. I'm Calvin Ball, your current Howard County executive. I'm a lifelong Marylander. I've lived here in Howard County since the summer of 1999 with my beautiful wife, Shani. My undergraduate degree is from Towson State University. I have the interesting distinction of being the last class to be state. My master's is from University of Baltimore. My doctorate is in education from Morgan State University. I'm excited to continue to have this community conversation, especially with my Republican opponent, because we each have a 4-year record, and you can compare our records, and you can look toward our vision. And so I want to really leave most of the time for the audience, but I'm just so excited to be here. Over the last 4 years, we've done a great deal together through the pandemic while still leading in our pandemic response and saving lives. And I look forward to continuing to be your county executive should I be so honored to do so. Thank you.
In the interest of saving time and respecting all parties, please hold your applause to the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm moving the mic a little closer because I was told it needs to be close, and we were told that his doesn't need to be so close, so it's kind of different here. My name's Allan Kittleman. I appreciate everybody coming out today, and I thank the Savage Community Association for hosting this forum. I'm here tonight with my daughter. Woo, you look like my daughter. My wife, Robin, will be married 36 years this November, and also my youngest son, James, is here as well. I'm a lifelong Howard Countian. I went to Appleton High School. A lot of my friends came from Savage, because Savage was in the Appleton area when I was in high school. I graduated from Appleton, then I went to the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, UMBC. I got a degree in political science. Thought I wanted to do something in the ministry, so I started working with a group called Young Life. If you haven't heard about that, it's a high school ministry. Did a little bit of work with them, went on their staff for about 1.5 years, and then decided to come back and become a teacher. And I student taught at Dunlogan Middle School and Glenelg High School for social studies. And before deciding what school made to go work in, I made the mistake of going to law school. I decided to be a lawyer, and I went to the University of Maryland School of Law at night. I worked during the day. I was actually a copy person, a messenger at a law firm, so that I could work during the day and earn the money to be able to go to law school at night. I graduated from the University of Maryland School of Law, and then like Dr. Ball, got involved in politics and was a member of the county council from 1998 to 2004, served in the Maryland State Senate representing Howard County from 2004 to 2014, and then served, as he said, we both have 4 years as county executive from 2014 to 2018. I look forward to your questions. Thank you for coming out.
All right, I'm going to start us off with 2 questions. So the first question is regarding adequate public facilities ordinances and the occupancy of Howard County schools. So there's been students having to take classes in trailer classrooms. That number seems to have grown over time in the county. There's concerns about whether adequate public facilities ordinance allows enough funding or keeps track with the growth in the county and the demand for our very popular, excellent school system. How would you change, if anything, to ensure that Howard County schools meet the needs of our constituents without resorting to temporary trailer classrooms?
So we have long had a school overcrowding problem here in Howard County for a number of reasons, and I'm very pleased that working together over the last 4 years, we've been able to put more money into school construction. More than $350 million, which is $80 million more than when Mr. Kittleman was county executive. And that has allowed us to move projects forward like Talbot Springs Elementary School, High School 13, Hammond High, and make more deferred maintenance. Addressing school capacity is a very important issue, and the work that we've done makes it so that we'll have room by the end of this year for about 2,400 more students. However, the next county executive is going to have to deal with the adequate public facilities ordinance to ensure that it does address our growth and it ensures that we do have those public facilities. We've made progress. We have a lot more progress to do, and I'm looking forward to working with our community and our county council to ensure that we do have an appropriate, adequate public facilities ordinance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I agree that we do have issues, and we've had them for a while. The problem is we've allowed more development to be done than we should have, and too quickly. When Dr. Ball served on the county council, which is also the zoning board, for 12 years, never once did he vote against an increase in density. And now we're suffering the consequences of all those votes. And so now we're dealing with having to have overcrowded classrooms, and we're having the quality of our education not be as strong as it should be because of that and the class sizes. And so we need to have a county executive who's going to be stronger to make sure that people follow the rules, to make sure that people do the proper things, and to make sure that we have a planning board that oversees some of the development before it gets to the zoning board or the board of appeals. And we need to have a strong planning board. When I was county executive, when I had an opening on the planning board, the person I appointed was Sue Garber. I thought she would be a reasonable voice on the planning board, and she would have been, but the county council voted her down 3-2. Dr. Ball voted against Susan Garber being on the planning board. I think we suffered a loss there by not having Susan Garber's leadership there. And we need to have a county executive who wants to have the citizens have a voice and to make sure that they can talk and discuss and have a say in our development. I appreciate the work that he's done on the Talbot Springs Elementary School replacement, started under my administration. I appreciate the work on the High School 13, started under my administration. I appreciate the work on the Hammond High School renovation, started under my administration. That's something that does work among other administrations. When I was county executive, I took a lot of help from Ken Allman and kept on going through it. That's one good thing about Howard County, that we seem to continue to work on some good projects together, and we don't always have to disagree. But I do worry about the trailers, the portables. We don't want kids. There's also a safety issue. The safety issue is that, you know, if there's a storm, we don't want people out in a portable when they could be inside a safer school building. So I see the hand went up. I'll stop.
Okay, and the second question is somewhat related. So there's been an ongoing perception, certainly within some journalists and blogs, that Howard County has some special interests who may have undue influence on the utilization of Howard County resources, whether that be at planning and zoning hearings, how decisions may are made. If you're elected to be the next county executive, how would you address those concerns or try to increase transparency with how Howard County allocates its resources?
Well, I'm very pleased with the work that we've done thus far on our general plan. We've had about 8,400 community comments, and we have had probably the most inclusive, transparent process to help develop a community's general plan. And I think that that's very important moving forward. You know, we've seen the challenges of too much residential development. Under Mr. Kittleman, there were approximately 7,400 residential building permits that were approved. And there were about 1,000 development waivers that were approved under Mr. Kittleman. Both of those numbers have decreased under our administration, and I think that we are doing a better job of holding developers accountable. And I think with a community plan, we'll continue moving forward. It's important to look at the data. Mr. Kittleman often talks about what happened when I was in the zoning board. He doesn't talk about as much what happened when he was in the zoning board, but neither of us are running for zoning board. We're running for county executive. And so I think we can look at our records as county executive, and I think the records are clear. More residential building permits approved, more waivers approved, and I think that we'll have a more transparent process under my administration.
Well, we should talk about our zoning board records, because I think it tells you who we are and how we're going to go in the future. He voted for every density increase in 12 years. I was on the zoning board for 6 years. I did not vote for every density increase. In fact, I voted against Maple Lawn. Not because I don't like it, but I thought it was too densely residential. So we do have stark differences there. Talk about influence. It is a big concern of the people I talk to in Howard County, the influences that are on Dr. Ball. If you look at his campaign report, he has received $86,000 from one developer, his family, and his multiple companies. $86,000. I'm doing the Citizens Election Fund. I haven't taken one dime from any business, corporation, development company, special interest, or any PACs. Now, in the previous time, before we had the Citizens Election Fund, yes, I did, because that was the only game we had in town. But now that this is the first opportunity we've had the Citizens Election Fund, I'm the only candidate who took advantage of it. And I think it's important that we have a county executive who does not have any undue influence because of big donors, and that'll be me. The general plan process, he talks about being transparent. People I've talked to who've been participating in that process tell me they don't feel like they've been heard. They don't feel like that they've been respected. They feel like it has been a done deal and that they're not being included. So I think we need to be more transparent, not the way Dr. Ball has run it, and he also has delayed it another year because he was worried about it coming out and being voted on during an election.
All right. At this time, if anyone in the audience, this forum is here for you to interact with the candidates and either raise concerns or ask them direct questions. Do we have anyone in the audience who'd like to ask the candidates a question or raise a concern?
Okay.
Sure, yes.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'll break the ice.
That's good.
So, Mr. Kittleman, this question is for you. So
Okay.
I looked at both websites, and of course I've known Dr. Ball for a little while. Are you running as an independent or as a Republican?
I am a Republican, but I'm running as a proven independent leader because if you look at my record, and you said you looked at that, you'll know that on many issues I have bucked my party, and I've worked closely with Democrats when I was on the county executive or as a state senator. So I think I have a good reputation of being somebody who's moderate, who works with both sides, and who's not really tied to either far extreme.
Gotcha. So in looking at your website, I was confused because I saw independent. I didn't see anything referencing Republican other than when you were the Senate Majority Leader. Or,
Minority Leader.
Minority Leader.
Yeah.
That it sounded like there were some differences of opinion with things going on. I'd like to hear more about your exodus from that role.
Sure. When I was Minority Leader, there's a long issue with that, but it became clear that marriage equality was an issue that was going to come to the floor of the Senate. And I wanted to make sure that I could try to bring the parties together on that issue. I had always supported the LGBTQ plus community and all the issues that had come before me as a state senator, whether it be emergency decision making, going to hospitals with their partner, their domestic partner at the time that they called them. And so when that came up, I came up with a plan, tried to work out a plan that could bring everybody together. And when I told my Senate Republican colleagues about it, they balked, and they were not happy. And they didn't ask me to leave as Minority Leader, but it was clear that they didn't agree with me on trying to figure out a way to make marriage equality happen. And so I voluntarily resigned. It wasn't forced out. I voluntarily resigned because I could tell they didn't want somebody who was socially a little more progressive or moderate. And so I voluntarily resigned, and then I took a lead in marriage equality. I was the only Republican state senator to vote for it, and I was proud to be a Republican that went statewide helping it during the referendum in 2012.
So for anybody who is unclear, Mr. Kittleman is a Republican. I am the Democrat running. We both started our careers working with our party, Mr. Kittleman in the Republican Central Committee, me in the Young Democrats of Howard County, Mr. Kittleman going to Republican national conventions for the Republican nominees of president, me going to the Democratic national conventions, and it's not on his website that much for a reason. There are people who have left the Republican Party in droves since Donald Trump was elected, but not Mr. Kittleman. Mr. Kittleman is still a registered Republican, and I'm still a registered Democrat.
I think I need to respond to that. Anyone who paid attention knows I did not support Donald Trump. Not in 2016, not in 2020. In 2016, if you look at the Baltimore Sun article in June of 2016, the very first paragraph said that County Executive Allan Kittleman unabashedly states his opposition to Donald Trump. So I think it's better to have Republicans fighting against Donald Trump than leaving the party. I think it's better to have Republicans fighting to make sure that our party comes back to a common sense place. And so, no question about it, I don't support Donald Trump. And I have been a firm believer in making sure that the center is where we should be. Not on the far left, like Dr. Ball, but in the center where we should be.
Okay, so just please, if you can, try and make sure we get equal time for both candidates. Try to address your questions in a way that both candidates can respond if you could. Thank you.
I think we did a great job
I
on
thought so
that.
too.
Great improvisation. Excellent.
Okay, well, I am a Republican. I will say that I am here, and I paid off my house. And the one thing that burns me up every July when I pay my tax bill is $43 for water rain tax. I would like to know what taxes you're going to cut, and can that rain tax be the very first one? Because I'd love to have my $43 back. Thank you.
Well, when it comes to the stormwater remediation fee, when Mr. Kittleman was county executive, he fought to actually get that abolished. I fought against that. I believe that we should ensure that we have appropriate funding to address stormwater, and I think we've seen so many issues around our community when it comes to flooding and water quality. And when Mr. Kittleman made that proposition, he never even had a reasonable way to actually backfill if we were to not have that funding source. And so oftentimes you'll hear him talk about cutting taxes. Rarely do you hear details about how he's actually going to continue to provide the excellent service. How are we going to keep our MS4 permits? How are we going to make sure that we fund the projects that are not only required, but frankly the right thing to do to protect our community?
Speaking of MS4 permit, we were able to meet that when I was county executive. And we did it much less than what the previous county executive, Allan, had predicted it would be, using his argument for why we needed to have the stormwater fee. Hundreds of millions of dollars did we save, and we were able to do that. So I think it is possible. I don't think it's likely. What I think is more likely is for us to be able to reduce other taxes. Dr. Ball raised our fire tax 34%. Dr. Ball raised our trash fee 48%. Dr. Ball raised our transfer tax 25%. If you just look at the fire tax, he raised it 34%, and right now in this year's budget, he has $60 million fund balance. So next year, his budget projects a $71 million fund balance. So you can reduce the fire tax and not cut one service. So don't let him tell you, oh my gosh, he's got to tell us where he's going to cut services. You don't have to cut services. There's money sitting in a bank account that is just sitting there. I think it'd be better used in your pockets, you spending it in our local economy, and you helping our economy get stronger than for it to be sitting there in a government bank account.
If I just may, when I took over as county executive, our fire fund was facing approximately $150 million structural deficit. Can you imagine going into a pandemic and our first responders, our firefighters, our EMS personnel, not necessarily having all the resources that they need? Now we actually have 4 personnel on apparatus. We didn't have that all under Mr. Kittleman. And so, yes, he talks about cutting the fire tax. I do not plan on cutting the fire tax in the initial year, because I know how important ensuring that we have an appropriately funded fire, EMS, and rescue service is. And so that's where we strongly disagree.
Yeah, we disagree. I think he's overtaxed us. Okay.
Okay. Do we have anyone else from the crowd with a question? Please come up to the microphone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'd be interested in hearing any additional ideas you each have for helping out senior citizens in Howard County. The taxes are eating us alive. It becomes increasingly difficult to maintain a standard of living. Many of us are falling between the cracks, so we don't qualify for programs for our most needy. But on a fixed income, it becomes increasingly challenging. So please, any ideas?
So as county council member, I voted for our senior tax credit. As county executive, I launched our age-friendly initiative, which we've been able to work with the AARP, and they've touted it as a thoughtful, detailed plan. And one of the things that continues to come up is our aging in place tax credit, which is actually before the county council right now. And so I think you're right. We do need to be a place where people can grow in age in Howard County. And as your county executive, I've made investments in our 50-plus centers to ensure that we've been able to expand the Bain Center, so that we've been able to break ground on the East Columbia 50-plus center. Of course, these are wonderful to those particular communities, but whenever you invest in a 50-plus or senior center here in Howard County, not only is it a great resource for the entire county, but it takes some of the pressure off of the other resources and the 50-plus centers. And so I think we have a lot of work to do, whether it's ensuring that we have a better viable transportation system, making sure that people are able to age in place. I think we do have some work to do. We've expanded some of the social opportunities for our older adults. In the age-friendly plan through AARP, there are 8 different domains, and we have made progress, but we have a lot more work to do. And the next county executive is going to have to do a lot more, because the senior population is the fastest growing right here in Howard County. And I think that as we are continuing to be the best place to live, work, play, and grow older, we need to ensure that we do have the appropriate services.
It's a very important issue. I hear about it everywhere I go, Susan. And, you know, seniors provide so much to our community. They provide strong volunteers to help in so many different nonprofits and other areas in our schools. They have an institutional knowledge that we shouldn't lose. And I think too many are feeling like they need to move out. Going back to the previous question, because of other taxes too, not just the, property tax, but other taxes, the fire tax and others. Yes, the aging in place tax credit. For so long it was so difficult because you had to live in your house initially 40 years, and then it was down to 35 years. Fortunately, the state has now allowed us to remove that and go down to a number that we feel comfortable with in Howard County. I'm glad that they're removing that legislation in front of the county council, is removing the 5-year limitation, that you can only receive it for 5 years and then it's done. I strongly support us doing that, but we need to remove that 35-year requirement. I mean, for someone to have to stay in their house for 35 years, there's very few people can actually meet that. Because, and you also should make it, I think we should be looking at it, is you lived in Howard County for a certain period, not just in your same house. Because some people might want to downsize, but they got to stay in their same house. So I think we got to look at ways in which we can help it, because I'll tell you, I have 2 grandchildren, one living in Howard County. I don't want to leave Howard County. When I retire, I want to be able to stay here and be able to do things with her and my children and the rest of people in my community. So we need to look for ways in which we can help that way. I also agree with transportation. We need to find a good public transportation system. We did a lot of improvements under my administration. I know Dr. Ball's done some as well, but we need to make sure that it's usable, that it helps people to be able to get to places in less than 2 hours across the county. So my goal would be to continue to work on the taxes to make them less so that people can afford to live in Howard County.
Great. Do we have anyone else in the audience with questions for the candidates? If not, I can go ahead and read some that we've got prepared or submitted ahead of time.
Sure.
Okay, so.
I'll give you a question.
Sure.
Come on.
Oh, okay. All right. Speak to
Feelings on Howard County being a sanctuary county?
So when I was a county council member, I moved forward legislation to ensure that we did protect our immigrants. Mr. Kittleman vetoed it. It was then passed as the Liberty Act. I don't think that people should be discriminated against based upon their immigration status. Mr. Kittleman actually, not only after vetoing that legislation, but he put money toward a referendum that is currently before us. I think it was about $5,000 from his campaign after he had raised over $1 million, much of it through special interests. And so I think that we should ensure that we are a safe and welcoming place regardless of your immigration status. And I find that oftentimes when we create communities where people can be safe, they feel safe.
I agree we should be a welcoming place, and we are. We always have been. Ken Allan, when he was a county executive, he used his the police office, the Howard County Police Department's relationship with the federal authorities to deal with gang violence in Howard County. I mean, I've talked to several police chiefs, former police chiefs, and they told me you should never tell one law enforcement agency they can't talk to another. Now, we've never enforced federal immigration laws in Howard County. That's not our job of our Howard County police officers. It wasn't under my administration, it's not under Dr. Ball's administration, it was under County Executive Ullman's administration. We don't do that. But we need to make sure our people are safe. And there's no reason why, if we're not doing that, why we should do something to hamper our police department. I just don't think that makes sense. It'd be different if someone could tell me that there's a police officer doing something wrong, then we have to address it. But you know, when I was county executive, not one complaint came from the immigration community about how our police officers treated them, or any county employees treated them. And that's why Hector Garcia, who was the executive director of the Foreign Born Information and Referral Network, the largest immigration advocacy network when I was county executive and even before, is endorsing my candidacy. He wouldn't do that if he thought I would do something that would harm our immigration community. He understands that, you know, we can be a welcoming place, but we can also have to be a safe place. And what's unfortunate is a lot of crime is focused on folks who are immigrants. And we want to make sure that everybody feels safe in Howard County. And I don't think you do that by having a law, you do that by having good leadership.
Is that one of the reasons our taxes are so high? Because we're busy taking care of everybody else from other countries. I know a lot of veterans that are out there sleeping on the street because nobody's taking care of them. It really irks me. Pretty soon I'm no longer going to be a Howard County resident because I've been taxed out.
So Myra is concerned about, you know, is that becoming a drain on Howard County resources? Is a certain amount of our budget or tax dollars going towards people who aren't from here? Is that fair?
That's fair. I mean, I'm not against anybody.
So what would your question to candidates is how much effort are we doing to support people who may be new to this country?
Where is the money coming from to support these people from other countries when we can't even take care of the people we have? Is it coming out of my Medicare and all that? Medical assistance? I mean, I know we're giving everybody medical assistance. That money's got to be coming out of taxpayers' dollars. But honestly, when you see veterans sleeping under a bridge because nobody takes care of it and everybody turns a blind eye, there's something wrong. We're getting all these people coming from all these different countries. We're all accepting it. If you go up to social services in the county, people that are coming to this country are getting paychecks. They walk in and say, I'm destitute, I need a paycheck. They give them services that are all out of our Social Security. Why? They didn't put a dime into Social Security. It would be like you sticking your hand in my bank account. Why is this the way it is? Between the two of you, somebody tell me why this is this way, because this really has disturbed me.
So I appreciate you expressing your concerns. I am going to continue to stand with our immigrant community as well with all of our residents here in Howard County. Oftentimes what we find is many people actually do come here, they pay taxes, they work. Many studies around the nation have actually evaluated, and among the undocumented population there is often less crime being committed because oftentimes they're so afraid and they want to keep quiet, and they've come from countries where the laws are so draconian that they're extremely afraid. So oftentimes what we find is this confluence of people who are working hard, are paying taxes, are usually not committing as many crimes per capita as those who aren't undocumented. And so I think that there are numerous issues that you just brought up, but that is not usually an either or. I think we also need to look out for our veterans. Oftentimes when it comes to homelessness, The biggest issues surrounding homelessness are mental health challenges, substance misuse disorder, or some sort of catastrophic financial issue, like maybe they had some sort of health challenge that cost, $100,000 and $150,000 or something like that, and their medical insurance wasn't good. So those are usually most of the issues, and that's why we have invested more money in the plan to end homelessness under my administration than on previous administrations. That's why we are making sure that we're working with our veterans and our homeless population and creating more affordable housing opportunities, helping people to invest so that they can become homeowners and addressing the down payment and settlement help. And so I think there are numerous issues, addressing some of the mental health challenges, making those investments, addressing the addiction investments. I think there are a multifaceted issues that ensure that every resident in Howard County is safe and feels welcome.
I think, Myra, a lot of your question goes to the federal. It really does. It goes to what's happening down at the border. It goes to what's happening, we talk about Social Security and things like that. I'm all for securing our border, but I'm also for immigration reform. I think we got to figure out a way to make it work properly. But when someone's here in Howard County, I pretty much agree with Dr. Ball. You have to take care of the people who are here. Now, I think the best thing to do, and the best thing we can find for everyone, is give them a job. Let's help people find jobs, and so they can live here and be productive. So I think we need to treat people with respect and dignity. I was with some people today, and there are some people who are leaving terrible situations. Political situations, not just trying to leave because of the economy, but seriously, serious situations where their families are at risk. And I think we need to try to be helpful once they get here. Crossing the border, I probably agree with you more on we need to be stronger there. But when they come to Howard County, there's also a state law that says that everyone has to get a fair education, an excellent education, regardless of whether they're a citizen or not. And so, as Howard Countyans, we have to figure out how we can do all that. It's not an easy thing. The state sometimes put requirements on us and don't give us the funding sometimes. But I just can't imagine that even I, as county executive, or anyone should, if someone needs services, to do the best we can to provide them those services at an efficient cost, the best we can, but also to try to make sure we can get them employment if they can, because I think that then helps better than trying to have a battle over who they are. And it may not be the answer you wanted, Myra, I know.
It's definitely not.
I know, but I think the heart of yours is more of a federal issue. Once they're here, it's hard I can't in good conscience.
I asked the same question the other night, it's been a little different spin, and everybody keeps wanting to put it on somebody else's platter.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm asking you guys, whose platter does it belong on?
Okay, and all I'd say, Myra, in all respect, because I've known you for a long time, is once somebody's here in Howard County, I'm not going to turn them away if they need help. I just don't think that's the right thing to do.
And the ones that are here, what's going to happen to the ones that are here? They're turning away in the roads because they can't afford the system.
Well, I agree with you that, and that's what I think Susan even brought that up with the seniors.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to help that too. I'm just trying to be honest with you. I want to try to tell you something and have you come back later and say, Allan, you weren't honest with me. I'm just being honest.
So right now I have time about 5:08. It's about halftime. We'll take a 7-minute break. We'll come back at about 5:15, 5:16 when you all are comfortable.
And Dr. Ball will have the ball this way. Maybe don't mind. I'll have the ball.
So wanted to ask a question about, this is something that came up actually at our Wednesday night discussion. Illegally modified vehicles, noise ordinance violations, something that came to prominence, I guess, in Canada. One of our neighboring districts' council candidates became a hot button issue, and it was just a thing that Wednesday, while we're doing this recorded session, we had several extremely loud vehicles and dirt bikes go right by the hall here. If you're elected to be the next county executive, how would you address concerns about illegally modified vehicles, street racing, or dirt bike usage on public roads?
No, I appreciate that, and I was actually not too long ago at a community meeting in River Hill about this, because there's been some concern about having loud vehicles be parked in some of the shopping centers that are near people's homes and causing issues. And of course, I think we've all seen the videos of drag racing, and it was interesting at that community forum, people were there who were supporting the folks who have the cars that make the noises, and they were saying that they've been run out of Northern Virginia, they've been run out of Prince George's County, they've been run out of Montgomery County. They're saying they need to be here. And it's like, whoa, if you've been run out of everywhere else, why are you coming here? And so I do think that a lot of it's state law, but I think that we definitely need to have a better grasp on that. And I know that for a while there was some concern that the police department wasn't doing enough. I think they are now, hearing them at the community forum. I heard Chief Durr talk about that, as well as a major. But it does talk about just the issue of crime itself. The major who was at the community association meeting that night, he made a comment near the end, which I thought was shocking. Not shocking, but glad that he said it in front of people, I guess I should say. He said, quote, where there's an absence of police, there is crime, unquote. And he was using that in the discussion of the drag racing and other things. So I think that we need to make sure that we have our police officers involved in our community. I think it's important for them to be out there proactively and not reactively. When I was first announced running for this office, some police officers came to me and said they become more like firefighters. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And what they said was, we now come when you call. Firefighters are in the fire station, they come when you call. They, instead of driving around being involved in the community as much, they wait to be called, because they're concerned about what will happen if someone complains about them. I think we need to make sure that they have a leader who will support them. Dr. Ball will tell you he has the endorsement of the union. He does. But I've talked to many police officers who tell me that they don't appreciate the current leadership, and they want to make sure they have somebody who they know has their back. And I have been endorsed by the 3 prior police chiefs under both Democrat and Republican administrations, back when our crime was a whole lot safer and better today than it is today. If there's any question, I talk to people all around the county. Nobody feels safer now than they felt 4 years ago. And I think that kind of goes to the noise that we got to make sure that we have safe communities for everybody.
So I agree that safety is important. And so that's why I'm glad that since I've been county executive, Columbia has been named the safest city in America for 4 years in a row. If you look at the FBI uniform crime reports, violent crime is down more than 30% than under Mr. Kittleman's time. Assaults are down more than 45%. Property crime is down more than 20%. And while Mr. Kittleman talks about his endorsements of former police chiefs, I have the endorsement of the state FOP, the local FOP, and the Centurions for Justice. Mr. Kittleman did try to get the endorsement from the police union, and this was something that in 2018, when he got it, he called very special. Now that he didn't get it, it doesn't matter as much. And so I think it's more important to hear from people who are fighting crime right now, people who are pleased that I've made some of the highest investment in public safety ever. We have 24 new sworn officers that we've just funded, the highest increase in the last 15 years. And so I think that our officers, when I talk to them, they want to be supported. They want to be respected. Our community members want to make sure that not only are they safe, but they feel safe. And so balancing things like moving a body-worn camera program forward, having a police accountability board, and investing in community policing is something that you've seen under my 4 years as county executive in a much better, more robust and thoughtful way than you saw under the previous 4 years.
I have to respond about, I did not seek the police union endorsement this time, and last time I didn't seek it, they gave it to me. But what's interesting is I did talk to the police union president after I announced. He came to me and said the morale's the lowest that they've ever seen. He told me that. He told me that it took him 1.5 years to have a meeting with Dr. Ball. He told me that things were going down terribly. Now, less than a year later, they do endorse him. Why? Because he appointed a police chief who was a former union president, a police chief who had never supervised anybody in Howard County during his 19 years, but he was a union president. What's interesting is, I talked to the police union president, this was before the endorsement came out for Dr. Ball, and I said, all these things that are happening to you would not be happening if I wasn't running. And he looked at me and he acknowledged and said, yes, you're right. This wouldn't be happening if you weren't running. And I said, well, I would just appreciate a thank you.
Well, I stand by my police chief. I think that his years of service here in Howard County at the state level and at the state level and his management and leadership have made him an excellent police chief. And I think that any of you can probably call the union president today and ask him which one of us he supports, and he will emphatically say that he supports me over Mr. Kittleman.
And ask him if he told me that he's only getting what he's getting now because I'm running. Had I not run, he wouldn't be getting it.
All right, I think we've covered that topic.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Sure, come on.
I appreciate if you would expand your comments to include what we old folks used to call juvenile delinquents. We had perhaps been in a bit of a bubble here in the town of Savage, but lately that bubble has been burst. The Christmas tree gets vandalized. The new steps on this hall have been vandalized. People have their cars broken into. They have graffiti put all over the park. What can we do? What should we be doing to make sure that this doesn't become even more commonplace?
And that goes back, I mean, Susan, it's a good question. It goes back to being in the community. Our police officers, maybe now they're trying to do more because, again, I'm running, but for the first 3 years, they were not in the community. They were afraid that if they did anything and anyone complained, they'd lose their job. They told me that. So they're not going to be around as much if they're worried that someone's going to report them for doing something they didn't do. And it's really about leadership. It's about making sure that our police officers know they have that support. And the union is a union. Let's talk about the police officers. Go find police officers and ask them, not the union leadership. And it's just important because we need to have people in our community. If there are more police officers around Savage and more visible, it wouldn't happen as much. It goes back to the quote I told you about from the major. When there's an absence of police, there is crime. The best way to thwart crime is to have police officers in our community. And I think that is the most important thing we can do. And we also need to make sure that we work with the state's attorney's office to make sure people are prosecuted when they do something wrong, so that we can make sure that they don't try to do it again and it can be an example to other people. So we just need to work together as a community. We need to be able to do things like that. And I think that if police were more proactive in our community, we'd have less issues, Susan.
Well, Mr. Kittleman talks about the importance of having more police officers, yet there was barely an increase in the number of sworn police officers while he was county executive. He didn't make the important investments in our police department to ensure that there were enough officers. And yes, I'm sure during the pandemic and so many other things that there were officers who were uncomfortable, but I think that our officers are doing the best job that they can. And so I don't believe that officers didn't want to do their job appropriately because of some fear. I think that our officers are stepping up the best they can. I think that they need help, and that's why we've made the investments. And I agree with Mr. Kittleman that there should be partnerships with entities like the state's attorney. And so that's why I'm glad to have worked with our police department, our state's attorney, our sheriff, to take down the 59 Hoover gang leadership. This is a gang that actually continued to grow under Mr. Kittleman's leadership, that we were able to arrest 8 of the top people, a gang that came from California. And so I think we do need to make the appropriate investments in our police. We do need to have more officers around. We do need to protect our officers' physical and mental health so they can have a day off sometimes too. We have young officers who have growing families, who need vacations, but that means we need enough sworn officers to have more community policing, to deal with complex crimes like human trafficking and cybercrime. And under my leadership, we're moving in that direction.
I just want to respond. We had 20 vacancies before Dr. Ball gave the 24. We're having a hard time finding police officers. Why? Because no one wants to be a police officer anymore. It's hard to get people to do that. So saying you added 24 is nice, but we got to find to fill the 20 that we already had open. And we need to make sure that they know that they'll be respected. We need to make sure they know that they have the support from the county executive.
Well, I disagree that no one wants to be a police officer anymore, and I think that would be a sad state of affairs, but I think that we do actually have a recruit class of people who want to be police officers. I talk to a lot of young, excited officers. We have not only made the investment in sworn officers, but increasing pay and benefits, and so I think that we are creating the kind of environment where officers feel protected to be able to do their jobs well and protect our community well, and have things like body-worn cameras, which make sure that everybody can act in a transparent and supportive way.
I would just say go ask your local police officer.
I would concur.
Good. We agree on that one.
So, I'm going to give one more question, and then if you want to come up, I'm just going to go over this one real quick, but you're going to be next up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So this is more an administrative and a representation concern. The context here is the county's population has grown from approximately 59,000 to 335,000 since the county charter established 5 council districts. If you're elected to be the next county executive, would you consider fast-tracking a re-examination of the county charter to increase representation, to add districts so that people in maybe not centers of population like Columbia, but in some of our other communities have more representation, or there's additional seats on the council for people's differing opinions to be heard?
I'd be happy. I think we should have 7 council members. I would be happy to do whatever we could to get that charter amendment fast-tracked. But yeah, I think that the population now certainly requires us to have 7.
I think we definitely should take a close look at that. 7 might be the best number. I would caution against going much higher than that. I think we see in other jurisdictions where they actually are decreasing because it gets a little bit too much government, but I think we should definitely take a look at that.
We agree.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
This is for both of you. So going back to the police and the safety and crime, but taking it into our schools. I've been a resident of Howard County since 1999. I don't recall any type of school shooting or mass shooting of any sort under anybody's administration here, which we're very fortunate reading about this in other parts of the country. A friend of mine who was a Howard County resident was part of the Sandy Hook bad thing that happened. They lived over in the Clarksville Hunt, so I'm close to this. So my question for both of you, I know we have police in high schools, maybe middle schools, but maybe elementary, I'm kind of out of the picture. But from what I see, these perpetrators don't always come through the front door. They're coming through side doors and windows. So as a county council person and putting money into our schools and infrastructure, how can we protect these schools so we don't have a Sandy Hook or a Columbine or something else in the future?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a very serious question, a very serious topic. When I was county executive, Parkland shooting happened. Terrible. And we got together with the school system, the superintendent, the Board of Education, and our police department. And we actually initially worked with them to make sure our schools are secure, to make sure we put the funding in there to make sure that you had to buzz in, and every school was locked up. You had to go through the front door, and you had to buzz in to get in the front door, then you had to talk, and you had to have a safety net there. And so I was really pleased that we were able to do that very quickly with the help of the county council and the budget, so we did that. And I think that helped to make our schools physically more safe. I will tell you, there are issues with certain people sometimes propping a door up in the back because it's easier to get to their car. I mean, we need to make sure everyone understands you can't do that. I think I said earlier, my daughter's a teacher, my wife's a teacher. And, you know, I want not only for our children to be safe, but I want our teachers to be safe. And so the other thing that's interesting is, it's been coming out a lot of here, is the lack of cell service in many high schools and other schools, that you want to make sure that the teacher has the ability to call in if there's something happening that the front office doesn't know about. If someone did come in through a window or something, how are they going to find out until, you know, someone tries to get a hold of them? So I think we need to do a better job with our school system to make sure they have better connectivity to make sure that there's ability for students and for teachers to be able to get outside help if they have to. The last thing is school resource officers, and Dr. Ball and I disagree on this one, but I'm glad they're still in our high schools, but they're not in our middle schools anymore. And I think we should have them in our middle schools. That's one of the first things I want to do when I'm county executive, is to work with the Board of Education and the superintendent. When I was county executive before, I was able to work with the school board and the superintendent to get more in our middle schools. There were some before I took office. We had a plan to get them into every middle school in a few a year. And I was able to work with the school board and the superintendent to get that done. Unfortunately, right now, Dr. Ball recommended that we take them out of our middle schools. And so we don't have any in our middle schools right now. So that's one difference we have.
Well, I definitely agree that we need to continue to expand cell phone and broadband access. We've made great strides over the last few years, particularly as we were going through the pandemic, and it was needed, making more investment to improve the backbone for our school system, as we saw a lot of other systems around the state and the nation having trouble. And I'm very appreciative of Mr. Kittleman softening his language as of late and talking about that it was a recommendation. The Board of Education decides about school resource officers. And there was a time when the board was leaning toward taking all school resource officers out of all schools, and there was state legislation to ensure that Howard County couldn't have it. In working with our Board of Ed and other leaders around the county, we talked about keeping them in high schools, since they were all in all high schools, making sure that they had softer uniforms, having body-worn camera, improving and increasing the appropriate training for our school resource officers. And then, since they were only in half of the middle schools, making sure that there was parity across the middle schools. And so I think that is a part of it. But we do need to ensure that we make the appropriate investments in our capital funding for our schools, making sure that we do have schools that are safer as far as the actual buildings, and there's appropriate training so that we do ensure that our educators know, lock this door, lock it in this way, don't prop it open, as Mr. Kittleman talked about.
Any other comments? Okay, we have a next question.
Hi, Jeff Smith, volunteer treasurer at the hall, and also the hall, as one of the board members, I wanted to say this is really why we have this hall commissioned 100 years ago. By one of the presidents of the mill to serve the community and put the members out into maintaining the hall and doing just this. And I want to thank the county and the state for its support. And you can see the value of the support right in front of you here. But thank you both for wanting to step up and serve the public. Public service is something that I think we realize how valuable it is, and not everybody want to sit in your chairs and receive the kind of questions you receive and have to deal with the public and the crazy public as it can get. But I wanted to say one word, a positive word for the immigrant community. That's what attracted me and my family here to Howard County, is multiculturalism, multiracial environment here, and I think it does a great job of incorporating that and still maintaining the small town feel and community feel, and so that's something that the immigrant community has brought a lot of business into Howard County, and they bring a lot of entrepreneurial spirit. My family was Irish 2 generations ago, and so we were all that way. But I wanted to, the other thing that attracts people here in Howard County is infrastructure. And right now we're sort of competing with Montgomery County for its biotech draw, its technology draw. Howard County, I want to be sure Howard County doesn't get behind the ball, no pun intended, with supporting what is the future, which is EV infrastructure, broadband, a good stable electrical grid. Those things that we all know will attract business here, or If we don't, if we're not ready for it, the other counties are going to take all those resources. By the time we realize we really did need that, it's going to be too late. So perhaps you could just comment about the infrastructure and regarding how you fight for our money.
So, paraphrase.
Good luck.
If elected as the next county executive, what measures will you take to support infrastructure development and adoption of high technology that will allow our community to continue to move forward and compete with our neighboring counties and neighboring states?
Thank you very much, and that's an important topic about how we can also our commercial tax base is important. I give some credit to Ken Allan when he worked on the broadband initiative with the federal government, and we got a lot of stuff happening back then. We try to continue to focus on that. I think Dr. Ball's been continuing to focus on that as well. I think we need to look at our gateway area as maybe the real place to be. When we decided to build the courthouse, we moved the Economic Development Authority and the incubator over to the Gateway building, and now it's called, I guess, Ken Allan building. And so we've continued that, and we're trying to make Gateway the jewel for the commercial growth in Howard County, especially technology. But there's also Maple Lawn and other areas as well. I think 5G is really important. I've talked to some folks who are concerned that we're not there right now, and we need to make sure we have the 5G ability so that we can attract those companies to come here because they want to be able to do things fast and efficiently. But I think we also have to look at transportation. The Gateway area, when I was county executive, we were talking with the State Department of Transportation about how we could get better access into Gateway. It's hard right now, and it's hard when you want to leave. And there's other issues with transportation around Howard County. We need to figure out ways to make that better. We're the middle of the state. Everybody drives through us. And so we got to figure out ways in which we can help transportation go more smoothly so the businesses will want to be here and they can do their work. And so I think in Gateway, if we could figure out a way, and I was trying to do that when I was county executive, to get us to get an exit off of 95 directly into Gateway, kind of like they've done in other areas of the state, I think that would be really helpful for us. But I think continue to work with the Maryland Innovation Center, which I know Dr. Ball is continuing working with. I think having them in Gateway and having that be the center of it has gone pretty well. And I'm optimistic that we can get more commercial growth, because if we have commercial growth, then our commercial tax base goes up, then the pressure on property taxes goes down, because these commercial businesses pay taxes, but they don't require as many services. And so we really should be focusing that on commercial growth as opposed to as much residential growth.
I definitely think that we need to make those investments in the infrastructure. First of all, when it comes to bike ped, we put more money into bike ped throughout Howard County than under Mr. Kittleman, including our North Laurel Connections Project and the Savage Mill Trail. We have reduced a lot of the wait times on our buses, and you referenced EV. We've actually increased to 100 EV charging stations over the last 4 years here in Howard County. And so we've made record investments. We have the state's largest solar power purchase agreement. And that is something that other jurisdictions around the nation are calling us and asking us how we did it. And in doing that, we'll be able to power a lot of the electricity from our government buildings, saving taxpayer dollars. And so we are making those investments in the infrastructure, ensuring that we are more competitive with our other jurisdictions when businesses want to invest. And we are in an enviable place, proximity to 95 and to the airport, as well as the distance between Baltimore and DC.
If I could add, I should have said one more thing on infrastructure. It's also other things besides, roads and everything like that. It's also recreation and parks and other things. And one thing that concerns me is that when I was county executive, the people of North Laurel and Savage came to me and said, we want a community pool. We want a community pool. And I listened to them, and in 2017, we put money in for a feasibility study. We had members of the community be part of that study. A lot of folks in the senior community were asking for it. And then in my last budget before the election in 2018, we put $5 million in there for a community pool for the beginning of it, and that we would need like another $10 million to get it done. Unfortunately, under Dr. Ball, he has taken the money out of that project, and now in his most recent budget, he says that it's being discontinued due to budget constraints. Howard County has never been more flush with money now than he ever have been. And so he easily could have done this for North Laurel and Savage, but he literally took out $5 million was in that project and put it somewhere else. And now in his budget, it says that pool would not be built until FY 2028. FY 2028. It's not fair. The people of North Laurel and Savage deserve that. It should have continued to be in that budget. And I think that's another type of thing that brings businesses here to make sure we have those kind of activities as well.
I would agree that there are other investments. We've made record investments in broadband, our Transform HOCO, and we've invested more in our recreation and parks than under Mr. Kittleman, including having an accessible playground right here in Savage. We've made sure to work with our recreation and parks to do things like save the Savage remainder and make sure that there's not going to be development there. And while Mr. Kittleman likes to talk about some of the things like the North Laurel pool that could have happened under his watch, he didn't build it, and him glossing over, and I left it in there, and all it needed was another $10 million. And so I think, yes, it is a priority. Yes, we do need the North Laurel pool, and yes, it will get built. Should I be elected county executive?
Well, that's not true. His budget says it's not going to be there until 2028. He'll be gone. Folks, it's not a priority. And don't let someone tell you it's a priority when they put it in their budget. It's not going to happen until 2028. That's not a priority. It's something that people wanted in Savage and North Laurel. I was committed to it. And if he'd only put $2.5 million a year for 4 years, we'd have had it built.
And if Mr. Kittleman was really committed to it, it would have been done. He had 4 years, I have 4 years.
Feasibility study was done in 2017. We got the approval, we did the design, got ready for it. It was getting done.
Gentlemen, I think we've covered the pool topic very well. So we can see both candidates' positions.
We like it swimmingly.
I'd like to go ahead and give one of our residents a chance to ask the next question.
I think this dovetails quite nicely into this previous discussion. Given that you both have had the opportunity to essentially be county executive for a term, I'm very curious to find out what you feel is left undone from your terms that you are looking for a second term, either because something has taken a lot longer than you thought it would, or perhaps even because you didn't realize that something was an issue until you became county executive.
Thank you very much. I'll just look at what's happening around here. I mean, the pool, I should have waited for your question. The pool, I think, has to get done. And if I'm elected as county executive, it will be done before my term is over. I'm committed to that. I'm pledging that right now. And it's just disingenuous to say he would have done it. People came to me in my town halls and said they wanted it. We did a study. We put $5 million in our last budget. We were working there to get it done. To say I should have got done earlier is just disingenuous. The other issue is the Hearst property. If anyone knows where that is, on Route 1, right near Whiskey Bottom. When I became county executive, the day I became county executive Alman purchased that property. The day, literally, I became county executive that night, he purchased it that day. I worked with the community to try to figure out how we could deal with that. I know Susan Garber served on the committee, along with Donna Thuse and some others, that Jen Terraza suggested. The Democratic County Councilwoman and I worked together on this to try to bring the community together to figure out what we could do. And there were some proposals brought to us. Some that probably others might have said, let's go with it. And the community members said they didn't like what was happening. And they wanted to make sure that it was something that the community, I think that we talked about it as being the gateway into North Laurel Savage. And so I didn't say yes to the proposals that were made. I wanted to respect the community. I've talked to some of those members. They've told me that after I left office, nothing happened. That committee didn't meet anymore, and nothing has happened. I drove by the other day. It's exactly the same way it was 4 years ago. And that's just sad. I mean, we need to figure out how we can make it work. And I know the community was working with me to try to figure out how we can make that happen. And I think we need a county executive who will continue to work with the community to try to help improve the Route 1 corridor.
So I think we agree, North Laurel Pool. That definitely needs to move forward. I think also having the High School 14 in Elkridge, I think that will continue. If we make more progress on that in the next 4-year term, that'll help take more of the pressure off of all of our high schools. I think the extended North Tunnel in Ellicott City, That was a project that Mr. Kittleman did not support. Ensuring that that moved forward in the next 4-year term, which will help address some of the flood mitigation efforts in Ellicott City. I think there's a lot more work to be done for many. It was a very astute question the way you worded it. You know, I don't think that when we were running 4 years ago that we had anticipated things like a pandemic, and that slowed a lot of things down, or just the paperwork at the federal or the state level of certain things, or just getting up to speed with an entirely brand new council, or just so many different things that I think now we can continue to make significant progress, and I'm excited about the future.
Okay. Thank you for your question. I could have talked about it more, but I was trying to limit it to this area.
Sure, that's fair. Do we have any other questions in-house? Yeah. And in the interest of time, this will probably be our last question live.
Okay.
For about 15 years, we've been requesting a tech school. We hear in the news every day about people not having the ability to pull off certain jobs. Plumbers, electricians, HVAC. When they closed the Howard Tech Center, that was a big mistake. Because then the only way you could go was to go to Virginia Tech or whatever that is, or Lincoln Tech.
Mm-hmm.
Go to Lincoln Tech. And you had to pay an arm and a leg to go. And I know a lot of people that wanted the skills and didn't have the money to go to Lincoln Tech. So I want to know if there's a process that can happen that could cause a tech school to show up in our future.
Okay. Myra, thank you for that question. And we're probably not going to be too different on this, I don't think. But I mean, I agree with you. I mean, what's so frustrating to me is that some people feel like you have to go to college. Some people aren't made to go to college, and they should make that decision. And I can tell you there are a lot of people in the industries like plumbing and electricians. They're making a whole lot more money than I am, and they're doing really well. And I think we need to figure out better ways. Now, we do have the RL, which is where the old VOTEC was. And I know they're trying to do things to deal with construction and automobiles, and a lot of the automobile stuff is now more technical than it was in the past. I mean, when I was a kid, probably when you too, we would take our cars to the VOTEC and get it worked on, so people could be able to work on the VOTEC cars. I think we need to get back to a little more hands-on like that, and I'm not sure the best way to do that. I know Howard Community College could have some kind of academies that you can maybe work with people, but I think it's important that the HVAC, electricians, plumbers, stonemasons, these are all jobs that can't be outsourced. So many jobs can be outsourced, those can't, and we need people to do them, and they pay well. And I think we do a disservice to some of our students when we say, if you don't go to college, you're not doing well. That's crazy. Some people aren't made it. My brother didn't go to college. He did fine. We need to make sure that people know that they have options. And the best way to do that is to make sure they have the ability when they're in school to learn. And I'm all for how we can do that better. I think there are some things that are ARL that are good, but I think we also need to focus a little better on getting some more hands-on type of activities. So I appreciate the question.
Yeah, I definitely agree that there should be more options for many of the reasons that Mr. Kittleman laid out. And I'm proud of the progress that we've made over the last 4 years working with our school system, community college. We actually have increased the number of internships. We won a state award for it just a couple years ago. We've been working with some of our other laborers, electricians, those throughout the county to improve the opportunity for them to have more apprenticeships, to get the skills and to learn those important skills. And so we do have more work to do, but I think working with our partners to expand those opportunities is a step in the right direction. I think we've seen over the last few years when we're talking about student loan challenges, how different careers have ebbed and flowed, that you don't always have to get a college degree in order to be successful. We want people to be able to live their purpose, and we need people to have all of the skills so that we continue to have the best quality of life available. We want people to be able to become their very best selves, and if being the best plumber, electrician, working on cars, as Mr. Kittleman said, has become more technical, but there's still a significant hands-on aspect. We want people to be able to do that.
Thank you for the question.
All right, So, in the interest of time and to give the candidates to say anything left unsaid that wasn't covered in the questions, each candidate will have about 2.5 minutes to just cover any topics that they feel are important for voters to know their positions on ahead of the elections.
No, thank you very much. I appreciate for folks coming out and for folks who watch, I appreciate it as well. And thank you to the Savage Community Association. I think it's important, folks, that we talk about integrity. We haven't talked about that yet. There are some real integrity issues with the county executive's office. If you didn't already know that during his time in county executive, he's had 4 people working in his office who are his campaign staffers. They're getting paid by the campaign at the same time as being paid by Howard County, one of which is campaign manager. And he put that campaign manager in charge of public information requests in the county executive's office. You might ask yourself, why? Why would you do that? Why would you? I didn't bring my campaign people and keep them on my campaign roll in the county executive's office. Ken Allman didn't do that. Why are you doing that? Well, we found out when someone filed a lawsuit that he was doing that to hide his meetings with a local developer attorney. Well, what else is he trying to hide? That's a question you should be asking. Because why else would you bring your campaign into your county executive's office other than to run your campaign out of your county executive's office? And why would you pay people from both the campaign and the county at the same time? It's a real conflict of interest that I think people need to know about. There are other issues. He has police officers who are around with him. For at least sometimes during his term, he has required them to do personal errands for him, getting him lunch. One police officer actually refused to do so. He went out and asked the police officer, I want you to do this personal errand for me. And the police officer, to that person's credit, said, that's not part of my duties. What happened a few days later? That police officer was no longer on his duty. And that police officer got a different position in the department because the police chief said, we want to make sure we put you somewhere where you're happy, but we don't want you to tell anybody what happened. But of course, all the police officers talk, they all know about it. So folks, we have a problem with integrity. We need to make sure we have a county executive that you can trust. A county executive that's not abusing his office. A county executive that is putting you first. A county executive that's not taking over $670,000 in special interest money. Now, he'll criticize me for what I did in the past, but that was the only choice we had. We didn't have the Citizens Election Fund. I'm using it because I believe in it. And yes, I vetoed it because I thought it should be using tax dollars. That's a mistake I made. That's a mistake I made. But I think it's a good program. It's changed the way I look at campaigning, and it's changed the way that I'll be a county executive. Because when I become county executive, I'm going to stay in the program, which means when I'm county executive, I'll be the first county executive in Howard County history to not take a penny from special interests while I'm in office. That'll mean there'll be no undue influence on me, and I think that that's what you deserve to have. A county executive that will put you first, not his or her political ambition. Folks, I want to be your county executive because I want Howard County to be a better place. All I hear from people is that they're more worried about our future, they're more taxed. We need to make sure that we have people in Howard County and leaders that are representing them and speaking for them. I had so many people come to me and say, Allan, you need to run. You need to be our voice. A lot of them voted for Dr. Ball last time, and they came to me and said, we need you to run. So I'm running because I want Howard County to have a leader that they can trust and someone who will put them first. And I always tell you, you're the boss. I work for you. Thank you.
So I've always run for Howard County. I've never run against a person. If you want negativity, division, innuendo, sometimes outright lies, I think you can make one choice. But if you, looking at both of our records of 4 years, listening to our visions, if you want somebody who will ensure record funding to our schools, who will have the best environmental record in the state, if you want somebody who, under our time, according to the FBI Universal Crime Reports, has seen less violent crime, fewer assaults, if you want somebody who is going to make sure that we are running to make Howard County the very best place to live, work, play, and grow for all, then please support me. If you care about your quality of life, if you care about the issues that each and every day you're talking about, whether you're struggling to keep a roof over your head, to put food on the table, we've made the record investments in affordable housing. We're talking about the issues that matter, like aging in place. If you want to focus on what we've seen, like at the national level, negativity, division, personal attacks, then I think you have a different choice. I'm running to continue to be your Howard County executive because I love Howard County. I want Howard County to be the very best place for all and not merely overall. I got your support 4 years ago against Mr. Kittleman. We had a record success and we've had a record time while fighting through a pandemic and making sure that we had one of the best responses in the nation. And I ask for your support again. Thank you.
All right, folks, it's about 5:58. I want to thank everyone who showed their interest. I want to thank the candidates for volunteering to come out and take care of our questions and give us their outlook on where the county's going. We still have some refreshments in the back, but this concludes our Tennis Community Association